Welcome to today's vlog. Today I'm going to be making some kombucha. Kombucha is basically a mix of fermented teas. So you use green tea, well, black tea normally, and ferment it to make a probiotic drink. To start the kombucha, first I need a saucepan to heat my water. I need a jar, which I'm going to use the lazy way to measure my water. I usually make a half a gallon at a time, which is 64 ounces. This quart jar holds 32 ounces, so I'm just going to fill this 2 times. For kombucha, I normally use filtered water, so I'm just grabbing some from the bottle of distilled water I have over here. Now I've added the water to the pot. Turn on the stove and bring the water to a boil. I got the water nice and hot now, so I'm going to just pour some tea. As it's 64 ounces of water or so, I use 4 tea bags, which is basically 4 cups of water, 4 tea bags. I normally use 2 green teas and 2 black teas. However, some people use all black tea. Normally, if you brew green tea, I think it's usually called Jun, but I like the flavor of the green tea black tea mix, so that's what my personal preference. I also like Ceylon tea leaves, which taste slightly different to other tea leaves, and so I do buy those. Once I've added the tea bags, I'll also sweeten the tea, which is just adding some white sugar. Sugar also helps the bacteria to digest in the kombucha, so it definitely needs sugar. And white sugar with no other added stuff is usually considered the best option. I like my kombucha a bit more on the sweet side, and I like my stuff to ferment faster, so I use a bit more sugar. You can use less if you so desire. So what I'm basically doing is making sure that the sugar dissolves in the hot water. Once that's done, I will try to see how sweet the tea is. And once that's done, add 1 more sugar for good measure. Now the tea has cooled. I'm going to fish out the tea bags and put the kombucha in ferment. I usually compost the tea bags. So now I'm going to pour the tea, which is just plain tea, into this 67 ounce glass jar. For kombucha to form, you need a SCOBY. Here is my SCOBY hotel. This is just every time you brew kombucha, you get another SCOBY on top of your tea. I'll show you that. And this is just where I keep extras, which I have, along with some tea to keep it fresh and running. So these are what you use to start the brew. Without the bacteria, you won't be able to get the actual kombucha. I use a 67-ounce glass jar just to make sure I have enough space to add the additional things. Now in this bowl, I already have my SCOBY and some starter liquid. This is my SCOBY Hotel, and I can always get a fresh SCOBY out of there and some starter liquid if I need to. So all I'm gonna do is actually drop 2 SCOBYs into my existing mixture. There's actually 3 of them in here, so I'll put the other one in the hotel. And then add some of the starter liquid, which is just some tea from a previous kombucha batch, which is already fermented. Now that's done. Grabbing a fresh piece of paper towel, cleaning the jar, because of course I made a mess throwing in that liquid. Then here, I'm just going to take simple coffee filters, grab one of those, put it over the lid of the container, then put a few rubber bands on it to secure it. And set it to ferment. I normally leave my kombucha for about 2 weeks for the yeast to eat up all the sugar and have the good bacteria going in it. And then after 2 weeks, I'll then take out the SCOBYs, including the new SCOBY that would have formed in the bottle, and add some flavor if you want flavor, and then do a secondary ferment for it to have some fizz, because I like my kombucha with fizz. So this is the second step. Now I'm going to put this in a nice cool place to ferment. So once the tea has finished brewing, this is what your jar looks like. So as you see, my coffee filter is still on with my elastic bands. You see the 2 SCOBYs I put into the jar beforehand, and then the new SCOBY which has formed. So this is the gift that keeps on giving. Now at this stage, I'm going to remove the SCOBYs from the tea and strain off the tea. Strain off the tea is a strong word. I just don't want the sediment, which is in the bottom, to basically go into my tea for the secondary ferment. I prefer to do 2 ferments on my kombucha simply because I like the fizzy. So basically what I'm going to do here is use some tongs, grab the SCOBY that's in the top of the tea. It's really hard to do with one hand because it's rather slippery. Put it in the bowl here. Take out the other 2. Last one's at the bottom, so I'll wait for throwing it out. Then I'm going to just remove the tea from the bottle. Just grabbed another bowl to do this. So let's see if I can set you up to be able to see while I'm pouring. Okay. So this is kombucha. You notice all the strings in the tea? It's actually some of the good bacteria that's good for your gut hanging out in the tea. I try to leave the sedimenty stuff in the bottom. So this is what I'll be working with for my tea. So as I said, I like to secondary ferment my kombucha so it has some fizz, and I also like to flavor my drink. So first, let me grab some bottles. I use flip-top bottles, which are usually easier on me rather than using bottles that I have to recap. And I also need a funnel. So I'm gonna flavor the kombucha in the bottle. Today I'm using raspberry. So I have some raspberry drink that I made before, which is more of nectar rather than drink. I'm gonna pour some of this into the kombucha for some added flavor. And then I'm just gonna stir it and put the kombucha to secondary ferment. Simple stir to transfer all the flavor into the kombucha. And basically adding it to the bottles. It's kind of hard to shoot and do the job, which takes two hands at the same time. I don't fill the bottles all the way up because once the kombucha starts to secondary ferment in an airtight bottle, it carbonates, and I needed to have a little bit of room so the lid doesn't blow off. Fortunately, I don't have all the same size jars today, but it will work. There's no rule that says all the jars must be the same size. Now I have a little bit extra, so I'll put a little bit more into each jar. Once this part is done, which means I have the 3 bottles, I'm basically going to cap them. And leave them on the counter for a few days to ferment. Normally when I leave them, I try not to leave them by themselves, as I find if the carbonation gets too high and the jar explodes, it messes up the whole kitchen. So what I'll do here is put it in a bucket, which is just a simple pail. So that's my 3 bottles of kombucha. Put the lid on the bucket and leave it here. After about 3 days or 4 days, depending on how much carbonation I do, I'll then put them in the fridge and they'll be available to drink. This is the final product. If you notice, there's a bit of sediment at the bottom as the drink has settled. However, kombucha is a carbonated drink, so I don't shake it, as it can go quite the poof when it opens. So normally I usually turn it slowly around to try to get the drink to mix. Once I've gotten the drink to mix, I then open the bottle. I prefer opening the bottle slowly over the sink, simply because I had to mix this drink. I'm not sure how carbonated it is. So I'll just flip the cap and see what happens. There it is. And there it is bubbling over as it's fully carbonated. But once you leave it long enough, that's when you get a nice fizz on your drink. And this is your kombucha. Cheers. So I transferred it to a smaller glass, so I didn't really have that much in the larger glass to drink, but it's pretty nice. There you can see all the fizz and the flavor and the drink. Great probiotic. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends. Thanks for watching.